With the number of elderly individuals in China projected to reach 520 million by 2050, constituting nearly 38% of the population. Many young people are, however, hesitant to get married and have children. Consequently, China is grappling with more than just a demographic challenge. Each issue is entwined with the economic growth difficulties. China's aging society problem will accelerate over the next decade, with the number of citizens aged over 60 expanding by an average of 10 million per year, according to a leading demographer quoted by the South China Morning Post, adding further strain to the state pension fund, elderly care facilities, and medical services. The acceleration will push the number of senior citizens to 520 million by 2050, or 37.8% of the population, according to Renmin University of China Vice President Du Beng. China had nearly 210 million people aged over 65 last year, accounting for 14.9% of the population, up from 200 million in 2021, according to official data. The coming decade from now on is the most crucial juncture for China to actively respond to the aging population, Du said in an interview with Tencent Finance last week. Beijing acknowledged various demographic challenges, including a low birth rate and fast-aging society, in May and vowed high-quality development of its population, although concrete measures have yet to be introduced. It is already struggling to pick up its sluggish economic momentum with a vanishing demographic dividend. When the labor force is large and both ends of the demographic curve are much smaller, and increasing pension pressures further complicating recovery efforts. Pensions overtook family support for the first time as the main source of the financial income for China's elderly population in 2020, which Du considers as an active signal and, as stated by the Post, a giant silver tsunami. China confirmed in early 2022 that it will gradually start pushing back its long-mandated retirement ages, 60 for men, 55 for female office workers, and 50 for female blue-collar workers in the coming years, although Beijing has yet to release a timetable. The Urban Worker Pension Fund, the backbone of the country's state pension system, had earlier been predicted to run out of money by 2035 due to a decline in the available workforce as the gap between contributions and outlays increases. China will have an elderly population equal to that of all developed countries combined by 2030, Du added. The National Health Commission estimated that China will have 402 million people aged over 60 by 2040. The World Health Organization in October said that by 2030, 1 in 6 people in the world will be aged over 60, with the 2.1 billion people worldwide set to be aged over 60 by 2050. Last year, 29.1% of Japan's population were aged over 65, with 17% in the United States and South Korea and 7% in India, according to World Bank data. China, therefore, needs to expedite the integration of private pension insurance, enhance medical coverage, and refine elderly care frameworks. There were only 5.04 million elderly care beds at the end of 2021, according to the Ministry of Civil Affairs. China should also implement a flexible retirement system, starting with professions that are in high demand, such as teachers and doctors. The elderly can also help address China's shrinking young population by creating communities that blend seniors with young children, offering a helping hand to the overwhelmed younger generation to raise their children, Du added. While the elderly population in China is projected to increase to 530 million by 2050, many young individuals in the country are currently hesitant to marry and have children. This presents another demographic challenge that is equally complex and challenging to solve. The number of marriages in China has plunged to the lowest recorded level since the late 1970s, further illustrating the nation's worsening demographic crisis that includes the first population decline in more than 60 years. Wedding registrations have now declined for 9 straight years, and last year's 6.83 million newlyweds were almost half as many as in 2013, when a record high 13.47 million couples tied the knot, according to the Ministry of Civil Affairs. Young people now pursue a life that revolves around their own personal development and pleasure, instead of a life that revolves around a child, said Yuan Xin, Vice President of the China Population Association and a professor at demography at Nankai University in Tianjin. If starting a family stands in the way of their own development and happiness, they will opt out of giving birth or even marriage. The year-after-year decline in new marriages aligns with the country's shrinking population, which fell by 850,000 in 2022, marking the first time deaths outnumbered births since 1961. The number of newborns also dropped below 10 million last year for the first time in modern history, intensifying concerns surrounding China's deepening demographic crisis and sparking new rounds of discussions about how to encourage births, according to the Post. Rising costs of living and getting married, the falling number of young people, the deep-rooted cultural preferences for sons, and the rising average age of those who do get married are all factors that have contributed to fewer weddings, according to independent demographer He Yafu. Last year, the number of individuals rather than couples who got married for the first time saw a year-on-year decline of almost 700,000 to 11.6 million, according to the China Statistics Yearbook 2022. This was fewer than half of the 23.9 million people who had their first wedding in 2013. And the average age of people getting married for the first time has also increased significantly from 24.89 in 2010 to 28.67 in 2020, according to the China Population Census Yearbook 2020. The delay in marriage, particularly among women, is a natural process in the context of rapid urbanization and expanded higher education. However, macroeconomic conditions such as soaring real estate prices and employment pressures have also discouraged many from marrying early, as stated by Mr. Jiang Chuanbao, a professor of demography at Xi'an Transport University. China could follow the trajectory of some neighboring countries like Japan and South Korea. The average age of first marriage will continue to rise, Mr. Jiang said. He further noted that while the proportion of unmarried individuals in the entire Chinese population remains lower compared to many developed economies, the rate of unmarried women with a university degree or higher is relatively high. Changing cultural and societal norms also play a significant role in these decisions. In traditional Chinese culture, an individual's life may be considered incomplete without a spouse, and a family may be seen as incomplete without children. In the past, young Chinese parents often struggled to earn money for their children. However, nowadays, younger individuals are increasingly inclined to use that money to support their own lives. The Post mentions a case of Zhang Zhengying first told her parents that she and her husband would not be having children. The reaction was one of shock as they asked Zhang if there was something wrong with her. Nothing, the 32-year-old explained. They just want to be a dink couple, meaning double income, no kids. My mother said she was already over 60 and would be ridiculed for not having grandchildren, Zhang said. But could I change my life just to avoid her being laughed at by others? No. Zhang, who recently graduated from a medical university in Shandong province with a Doctor of Pharmacy, is biding her time, waiting for a scientific research position to open up at a hospital later this year. Her husband will start work at a public institution in 2 weeks. For now, they enjoy staying up late, sleeping in, and not worrying about kids. On 20th of July, the couple set off on a 5,500-kilometer road trip, carefully mapped out to 59 hours and 3 minutes, that will take them through 3 other Chinese provinces. I definitely wouldn't be able to be this carefree if I had a child, Zhang said. Due to their parental responsibilities, a few of my friends rarely have the time to go out and meet up with me. Although Beijing put an end to nearly 3 years of restrictive zero-COVID measures in December, they have had a lasting impact on people's economic and mental well-being. For many, the resulting financial pressure and anxiety have left them with a worrisome outlook on the future and more inclined to reject the idea of parenthood.